What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of LUDWICK'S podcast. I am John Ludwig, and I don't even remember what number episode this is. This is another solo episode. I'm doing my best to do one a week. I know I missed last week, but I'm super proud of the episode before that. I was in Fort Myers, Florida for Eurotripper and was able to sit down with Paul Barney, who's a good friend of mine, but who also puts on the Eurotripper show in Fort Myers. So if you haven't listened to that one, jump back an episode. We did it in Paul's house in his dining room. The one thing I don't like about going on the road is the changing of variables, lighting and acoustics and all that sort of stuff. But I'm super excited to have Paul on. I otherwise wouldn't have had him on. You know, I don't think he's been up this way. I mean, he may not ever come up this way as far as I know, but really excited to have him on. We talk a lot about the inception of Eurotripper, and we kind of go into detail about some of his past and present Volkswagen builds, which he's gotten down some pretty cool rabbit holes with. So that was a really cool episode. Again, like I said, I missed last week. I've been juggling a lot, and kind of what I wanted to do with this episode is just kind of catch you guys up to speed. If you've subscribed to the YouTube channel, and if you're watching on YouTube now, you're obviously here, but the last few episodes, I've been doing my best to document moving into the new LUDWICK'S garage shop space. And that between furnishing the shop, getting everything set up, getting the cars moved over there, and the laser business, which is obviously my day-to-day business. And luckily that's been picking up a little bit, especially since I just took the shop on. That was great timing to have some business come in. But I'm also working on all the preparation work before Riverside Chattanooga, which, as you're listening to this is going live on my birthday. I plan on putting this out March 8th on Monday. So as you're hearing this, as I first posted, I am now 36 years old, and I think I'm going to officially stop counting this year, next year. We're done counting from here on out. But that being said, I basically leave in about a week and a half for Riverside, and there's an insurmountable amount of work to do before I leave. There's work to do on the van. I need to put a better transmission cooler on it. The factory transmission cooler runs through the radiator on that van, and it's just not sufficient cooling, in my opinion, for hauling a car trailer almost 3,000 miles round trip, especially through some mountainous terrain and whatnot. Fluid changes on the van. That van, I just turned 270,000 on that on the way home from Chattanooga when I first bought it. And the rear end is all original, obviously, and that's making a little bit of noise. Nothing too concerning, but I'm going to change the fluid in that, run an additive in that. And there's just a checklist or a punch list of things I need to do on the van. The headlights either need replacing altogether or definitely in alignment. My headlight switch has kind of been giving me some grief. I think there's a connectivity issue in the switch. So there's a bunch to do on the van. There's a handful of stuff to do on the 700. I'm planning on taking the 700 down. And basically that's because last March I had the Corvair in town. Now, if you remember, COVID basically got real serious right around that same weekend. And that's when a lot of cities in the United States started shutting down. Chattanooga shut all events down the day before Riverside. So hindsight, obviously we know why, but at the time it was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, it couldn't have been a week later or even 2 days later. So the Corvair was down there for that. And then the fall meet that we just had this past October for the rain date, for the most part, for Riverside, I had the Century down there. So the third car that I've got that's like somewhat ready to go is the 700. So I figured I might as well bring that down this time. And that car is basically ready to go. It needs some tidying up. I didn't drive it much at all last year. I was in the process of working on the Century and kind of just focusing on work. You know, the pandemic really kind of hurt me and my business, mostly because I make merchandise for businesses, and mostly throughout the year during the pandemic, businesses weren't spending their money on merchandise. You know, they had their own T's to cross and I's to dot for the most part to stay afloat. So that being said, I didn't do much with the 700. So there's a lot to do to get it to where I like it to be for just presentation and just general cleanup. But there's a lot of things I've been wanting to switch up on the car that I'm obviously have waited till under 2 weeks till I leave to decide to tackle. So if you're listening on Spotify or iTunes or just streaming it audio wise, go subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're interested at all in some of this car stuff that's going on. I'm like I said, now that I'm in a shop space, I'm doing my best to get at least one video up a week of what's going on in the shop, what's going on with the car projects. In an upcoming episode or in the next couple upcoming episodes, I'm going to cover a little bit about what I'm doing in my laser shop. I'm going to be making some laser cut and laser engraved pieces for both the 700 and some signage for the TGC booth, which I'm vending with at Riverside this year. So I'm going to kind of give you guys a little bit of an insight to some of that, some of the materials I work with, and kind of like my process on getting some stuff put together. So look forward to that. The YouTube is just youtube.com/John Ludwick, John. And that's kind of where I've been trying to split my time up. And that's why I didn't get a podcast episode up last week. It's just been so busy. There literally aren't enough hours in the day. I've been just trying so hard to budget my time. And if you've listened to most of these episodes, the podcast episodes, I've said time and time again that every year for the last few years that I've been self-employed, my New Year's resolution, which I don't read too much into those, but my New Year's resolution is always to manage my time better, to budget my time better. And that is ever so important right now, because I feel like every morning I wake up, I'll even have a list of things written down, of things I need to do, things I need to tackle. More often than not, I try to categorize them by order of importance and attention and all that. And I feel like I am just flying by the seat of my pants half the time. So as I'm recording this, it's 7:30 p.m. I have a lot of work I need to be working on downstairs in the laser shop. I have just as much, if not more, work to be doing in the shop space, which isn't here. It's obviously, not obviously, but it's a few miles away from my house. It's close, which is thankful, or I'm thankful for. But that being said, I wasn't going to sit down tonight to do this. And I just felt like it was important to myself to try my hardest, to do one a week. And even though last week didn't work out, here we are. And technically, I guess this week that I'm recording, it's not going live either. So I have a few weeks to make up. I'm hoping to line up a few episodes when I'm in Chattanooga for Riverside. And I don't know who yet, but I'm going to try to talk to some friends here in the next week, try to line something up. Right now, the plan is, and I think this was one of the questions that was submitted that I'm going to read through here in a few minutes. I think the plan is to head down, try to be in Chattanooga by that Tuesday night before the show, which is on March 20th. So we still have a lot to do. I think Corey's going to drive down. Corey's driving his Mercedes down, and I'm going to trailer the 700 with the van. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to take my 24-foot enclosed trailer, which is totally overkill for that 700, or borrow my father's open trailer, which I might do, depending on the weather. As we get closer to the date that we're leaving, I'll have a better outlook on the weather. If we've got a lot of precipitation or the roads are going to be pretty wet, I might take my trailer just for the sake of the car staying somewhat clean. Even though it's rusty, it's a pain to clean those cars. So yeah, I think we've got lodging sorted out. Corey's ready to go. He doesn't have a huge list of things from what I hear on his Mercedes. So we're getting things lined up. So aside from that, the shop space, super exciting. I mean, I've said this a lot on Instagram and in the YouTube channels or the YouTube episodes that I'm super excited about all this, but it's been a massive leap of faith and there's been no guaranteed influx of work. The plan obviously is to be able to start buying and selling more cars out of this shop to justify the shop. So it's not just a place where I tinker on my own stuff. So the Infiniti Q45 that I drove home from LA in November, which I did a series of YouTube episodes on that whole trip, that's going to be in the shop once I get back from Riverside. So right now, the crunch for the next 2 weeks, just under 2 weeks, is to get everything done for Riverside. When I get back, I'm going to be working on a lot of the LUDWICK'S garage and TGC gear that I've got made for the show. I'm going to be remaking some of those batches, get those up online on the web store for anyone who couldn't get to Riverside. And then the Q45 is going right in the shop. And the plan is to hopefully get up to Bag Riders in Burlington, Vermont, who I'm working with on suspension for the car. Do an episode of going up there, kind of giving you guys a tour of their new facility in Burlington, Vermont. Pick up the suspension for the Q, head home, get it in the shop, and get right to it. So that's next on the burner. And I've said before, I think I'm going to explore the realm of a product giveaway, or basically use products and use the car as a giveaway. It's something I've wanted to do for years. I've talked about this too. I feel like I'm the last person to finally actually execute it. I feel like a lot of people have obviously milked that as hard as they can. So I have my reservations going into it. I know it'll be a learning experience for sure, but this is a car that I don't have a lot of sentimental attachment to, like I do with my Century or the 700 or the Corvair. And those cars, if I were to sell them, I'd really curate who it's going to. With a car like the Q45, I'd love to offer it to any of you for purchasing products off the web store, LUDWICK'S Garage or TGC stuff. So getting ready to kind of traverse or wade through those waters, I guess, some waters that I haven't swam through before. But I'm excited, and excited for what's on the horizon for the shop in the future. So I'm going to be really kind of looking out for a few particular projects that I'm interested in, solely for the fact of buying, modifying, driving around for a little bit, and then ultimately to sell. So we'll see how that all goes. Also, if you're watching on YouTube, you'll notice I'm wearing the new LUDWICK'S Garage 5-panel jockey caps embroidered in yellow, and I am wearing the new LUDWICK'S Garage shirts, the black and white shirts that I'll have, both of which will be available at Riverside here in a couple weeks. If you follow me on Instagram, you'll notice that I also had some vintage rope hat, 5-panel hats made. Those are in navy blue with a yellow embroidery, and that kind of emulates my father's old colorway with Ludwig Service Center, his business that he ran for 45 years or so. So after he semi-retired, that name got put to rest, and the rebranding of LUDWICK'S Garage, which is what I'm doing, has been an honor. I'm really excited about kind of carrying the torch in a way, in my own idiom, in my own capacity, I suppose. So I am wearing the new 5-panel hat. I'm going to have the American Apparel tees available. Tomorrow I should be picking up the long sleeve shirts, which is the same design as this, except on the right sleeve I've got the L logo that runs all the way down the sleeve. Those are also printed on American Apparel long sleeve crew necks. Super excited about those. I've got a lot to make for the hard goods end of things for Governor's Club and LUDWICK'S Garage for Riverside. I'm going to be working on some leather, wood, and acrylic products that I'll be posting on Instagram and on the YouTube. Like I said, I'm going to try to document a lot of that on the YouTube as well. And yeah, that's kind of it. I just really wanted to get everyone up to speed. All the YouTube episodes are obviously each step in detail, but for the podcast, for the sake of kind of putting all the news in one episode, that's where I'm at with the shop. That's what I'm looking at for the next couple months in Q in the shop. And I'm still kind of getting set up in there. It's not quite comfortable yet. I still need to wait for a good warm day to open the bay door and go in there with like a pack blower to blow the walls down. The walls are just clung with a bunch of dust. They repainted everything, and then they did a bunch of concrete work on the floor. They ground the floor down before they epoxied it. So after they'd painted the walls, before they did all that, everything ultimately had dust just coated everywhere on it. And the furnace, the heater's a hung suspended heater up top, and every time that thing turns on, it blows dust out. And so the cars are just covered in dust. So I have a lot of recon work to do in there, but also workshop setup. I really have yet to figure out how I want the shop laid out. And that's oddly enough been the most frustrating part of this whole deal. Is I've spent thousands of dollars on tooling and tools, tooling that I know that I use often in my dad's shop that I haven't purchased for my own space because I haven't had my own space up until now. So I've got all this stuff. I've been spending so much money in the last couple months, and everything's still in boxes, and getting a comfortable layout so I can get right to work has been a super frustrating aspect that I wasn't anticipating. So lots going on there. I also am reviewing my first root beer. on here. Not my first root beer that I'm partaking of, but I've been talking on the podcast, the YouTube channel, and Instagram about my root beer enthusiasm. Most of my close friends know I don't drink alcohol. I've actually never drank alcohol. I've actually never had a sip of alcohol. And my social beverages of choice have been root beer and coffee. It's obviously coffee's the main one. Obviously, when I go out to get a drink with friends, it's coffee. And I'll hang out at the bar and I'll go out with friends. Obviously, I'm obviously the one who has always been the designated driver. But root beer has kind of become my weird, like, connoisseur beverage. I collect the bottles. It's been a really cool kind of scavenger hunt whenever I travel. It's really hard to find root beer outside of the United States. The United States and Canada, North America for the most part, is really where root beer is most prevalent, it seems. There's a few brewers in Australia, like Bundaberg, and I can't remember the other one. I've got two from Australia. Bundaberg's the big one. And there's a few from Europe, but it's not really that widely known in Europe. So what I've wanted to do since the get-go, even before the first episode of the podcast, was to not just review a root beer at the beginning of each episode, but to have you guys involved as well, where if you find a root beer in your travels or in your area, in your hometown or whatever, even if I've had it before and I have it in my collection, to send it to me and I'll review it on the podcast and shout you guys out for going out of your way to send me some root beer to basically review. Now, I'm not an expert like taste tester or anything like that. So I'm just going to go off of my past experience with different root beers and what I personally like. This one that we have today is called the Grizzly Paw, and it's made by the Grizzly Paw Soda Company. And this is just the Grizzly Paw root beer. And this is from Alberta, Canada. And this was actually sent in by Braden. Instagram handle is Tire Problems. He's actually from Alberta. So this is a local root beer to him. And I haven't had this one. So this is a first for me, not only on the podcast, but I've not tried this root beer before. I hope it's twist off because I don't have a bottle opener right here. It is not twist off. Well, we're getting a bottle opener. Right. Okay. Got the bottle opener. So on the label here, on the front label, and if you guys haven't seen it, I mean, I know if you're watching on YouTube, it's really difficult to probably see this because I don't have numerous camera angles. So what I look for in the bottles in my collection is I really look for the dark bottles, like the brown bottles. The clear bottles I put in their own section of the collection, but I really like collecting the dark bottles most. So this Grizzly Paw root beer is a clear bottle, but it says right on the front, homemade with real cane sugar. So that is that's a plus. So here on the side, it says the Grizzly Paw Brewing Company is located in beautiful Canmore, Alberta. It's not only our handcrafted beer and soda that makes us great, it's our colleagues who are involved every step of the way, thegrizzlypaw.com. So let's try it out here. All right. I will say, and this is a huge bummer, I've been thinking about this a lot. So if you guys don't know, I made a little bit of an announcement on Instagram. I caught COVID in November on the drive home with the Q45. Now, although that was almost 4 months ago, I lost my taste and smell for a long time. And as we speak, almost 4 months later, I still don't have any smell. Can't smell anything. Little remnants of things here and there. Now, unfortunately, my taste was gone, completely gone for months, it seemed like, for at least 2 months. The last month and a half now, it's slowly started to come back. But if you've heard from anyone else that you may know that have lost their taste from COVID, it comes back in real weird ways. Like some things don't taste like they used to, or some things taste completely different. I haven't experienced things tasting completely different than they should, but more or less the taste not being full bodied. Like there'll be a hint of taste here and there. So I'm hoping I can get a good review out of this root beer, not that it just tastes like every other root beer. So here we go. First swig. And this is not like a Dave Portney. One swig, you all know the rules. Maybe that is what we start. Root beer. Root beer reviews on Ludwig's podcast. One swig, you all know the rules. Wow, I really like this. That was actually a pretty good guzzle. I normally sip it. I know everyone that's just listening is just listening to me drink this root beer. I'm only going to take a couple sips. Yeah, wow. I actually really like that. That's so, not to judge a book by its cover, but most root beers that come in clear bottles, I don't tend to like. But this is like, and all this terminology is all made up. I'm literally just making these words up as I talk about this. But it's like a dark, deep taste. Like it's got like when I say a full body taste, I don't know what I'm talking about, but it's like very flavorful and dark. You know, some root beers are more carbonated and fizzy. And, you know, most of those root beers you get out of like your fountain machine. And I kid you not, on Facebook, I can't remember who posted it, but a friend in the New Hampshire area recently made a status on Facebook that said, McDonald's root beer is the best root beer, fight me, or something. And I swear I almost threw my phone right out the window. I mean, because McDonald's uses Barks, and it's dispensed through a fountain machine. So it's like they just get like a bag of syrup from Barks, and then they just mix in carbonated water with it. And there's really I mean, obviously that's what sodas are, but it's just, in my opinion, it's the most garbage of all the root beers. Not necessarily Barks, but just out of a fountain machine. Come on. So in comparison to like a deep, dark, like full-bodied tasting root beer, that's kind of what I compare it to. It's like a normal like fountain machine, real fizzy, not a lot of flavor. It kind of just goes in your mouth and down your throat, and that's it, you know. And there's really no savoring moments after you've you know, like drank it. You know, I can still kind of taste this root beer now, which is awesome. So I really do like this. And Braden sent me a full 4-pack, and actually sent me a really cool handwritten note too that was to make sure Corey got a few too, because Corey's done a lot of these episodes with me, and Corey doesn't drink, and he's big in root beer. Not as big as I am, but he likes root beer too. So I might be seeing him in a couple days. Yeah, I'll have to give him a couple of these. This is really good. This is good. Now, I'm not ready for a 10-point numerical scale, so I'll just wing it, because I'd like to get into that. I'd like to do like a 10-point, like John's 10-point scale of root beer, or root beer scale, or whatever. This is, oh man. Yeah, I really like that. I mean, for real though, there's a lot of root beers that just taste the same, and a lot of them taste different. They really do. For someone who doesn't, if anyone doesn't drink root beer, there's definitely a lot of root beers that are distinguishable amongst each other, like for sure. And this one, yeah, this one's real good. It's got a real thick taste to it, which I really like. Yeah, I'd say, okay, so off the cuff, 1 through 10. Now I'm going to do my best to make this like a 5-minute tops thing at the beginning of each episode, or at the beginning of each episode that I've got root beer to review. I'm going to say 7.5. 7.5. And that's only to reserve 8 through 10 on like mind-blowingly good and unique root beers, right? So I'm kind of throwing this at the wall, but I'm going to put Grizzly Paw root beer from Alberta, Canada, made with real cane sugar, at a 7.5. And I think that's high, because there's a lot of root beers that I taste that just taste like every other root beer that I would give a 4 or a 5 to. So Grizzly Paw root beer, cha-ching, 7.5. Right. So to not go too much farther into the root beer, I would like to do a root beer podcast. I think that'd be really cool. I put out a story. First of all, thank you, Braden. Tire Problems on Instagram. Really appreciate you sending this to me. He also sent a few stickers. I've put them behind the camera, obviously. He has a shop called Mark 5 Automotive, and you can follow that on Instagram, Mark, M-A-R-K, and I'm pretty sure it was the number 5 Automotive. I'm pretty sure that's his shop. But thank you for the stickers. Thank you for the handwritten note. And thank you for the root beer. I mean, that was a good call on that one. That one's really good. And I'll probably be hitting you up for more if I can't find it myself in the future. So that being said, I put out a story yesterday on Instagram, just asking for some questions, just to kind of add some filler space to this episode. and a handful of you guys came through. I did mention that this was going to be going live on my birthday, which is a Monday this year. And an early March birthday is just not, I don't know, it's not that much fun, especially when you're a kid in the Northeast, because it's still winter and it's cold. Let me see. Okay. No specific order. I glazed over these a little earlier. I haven't had any time to really think any of these through, so I'll do my best off the fly here. And now I'm going to be burping. The rest of this episode, this is probably not a good idea to review root beers at the beginning of the podcast. Maybe I should do them at the end because I'll be gaseous the whole rest of the way. All right, TDs, my buddy Dylan from Florida. Boy, this is a good one. Wow, we're starting off with a real good question. What do you do to get yourself out of negative mental spaces? Man, Dylan, man. So this is something I battle with every single day, every day. I'm an emotional guy. Most of my close friends, anyone who's listening to this who knows me well, knows that I'm a musician. Oh my gosh, that root beer's messing me all up. I am a musician as my first passion. And I grew up through middle school, high school, and then my adult years playing guitar mostly, but learning drums, teaching myself piano. I've got a modest recording studio here at the house. And it's always been my emotional outlet. BMX was, automotive stuff is, anything that you have as like a hobby or a passionate career, obviously is an outlet as well. But music's always been my emotional outlet, whether or not it was a rocky relationship or just dealing with just the tides of life, really. So aside from that, I live alone. I've lived here in the house that I grew up in. I rent this out off my parents. I've been in the house for almost 10 years, over 10 years now, but I've been in the house alone for about 6 years now. And so on top of just living alone, living in a small town in New Hampshire, being self-employed, that's the huge one. Having to traverse the mountains and canyons and valleys and rivers and just everything that life throws at you for being self-employed. The inconsistent income to the constantly having to be moving in order to be bringing business in. Like I don't have a storefront where I can just go to the shop in the morning, turn the open sign on, and people just start coming in. There's two sides to each coin. Sometimes I envy my friends who are in those businesses. I was at my friend Josh's barbershop, Lucky's barbershop, earlier today, and we were talking about just that, where I envy some of my friends who can turn an open sign on and have business coming in every day, no matter what, as long as they're there. But on the other hand, for me, I don't have an obligation to have a door open on the sidewalk like every day. So I have the freedoms and liberty to take off if I need to take off to clear my mental head and headspace, obviously. So that being said, I deal with that a lot. I've never dealt with depression as far as I diagnose it. My mother dealt with a very serious chemical imbalance depression years ago when I was a kid, and she's healthy now, and I don't really talk about that too much, but she's healthy now, and there's not a day that goes by I don't take my mother for granted. And but I've seen the darkest of dark realms of what depression can do to somebody and how it can grip them, especially when it's out of your control, when it's an actual chemical imbalance or it's something outside of your social life or outside of the environment that you have control over, whether or not it's your job that's bringing you down. And that way, that change of scenery, if you quit that job and start another job, you have now kind of almost given yourself that medication in a way. So I wouldn't say I've ever struggled with depression, but I struggle with the tides of emotions for sure. There's days where I wake up in the morning and I am already defeated before I've climbed out of bed, or I feel that way. So, and I don't have any rhyme or reason to it. It's weird, and I don't think it has anything to do with being bipolar or anything, but there are some mornings where it just takes so much more to not just get going, but to be ambitious and motivated and just kind of optimistic about what I'm doing. Lately, that's been ever so present lately with taking this shop space on, with the huge pouring out of money. Like, I've been hemorrhaging money the last couple months, and we're coming into tax season. And you know as well as I do, if you're self-employed, that February through April is just the worst time of year. It's just the absolute worst. You are not getting money back. So it's difficult. And to answer your question without beating around the bush for another 10 minutes, I reach deep. I trust in God that there's a plan, for my life, for everybody's life. But like, it's, when you put your feet on the ground, the reality is you have to get to it. You have to get to it. And the day's going to pass by whether or not I lay in bed all day or I get out of bed and decide to make it a good day and look at the glass half full and not half empty. So I wish I had a good answer to where it almost like was an outline of things to do in order to pull yourself out of those negative headspaces. I've just learned with my own wiring what it takes for thought process to focus on in order to pull myself out of those ruts or those gutters and focus on what's at hand. Because when you boil it all down, this is what I do too sometimes, or most of the time. I boil it down and look at everything I'm grateful for. I'm grateful for my family. First and foremost, I'm grateful for my health. I mean, I can get out of bed. I'm capable of mobility and thought, and we are pretty privileged in that sense that that you can make your life what you want it to be in so many ways, obviously. But I'm just grateful for everything I have, and that helps. That's like the first foot, through the door, I suppose. So that helps a lot. And like what I was telling Josh at Lucky's today, we were talking about this very thing, is just going and accomplishing little things does a lot for your mental state. It does a lot for your motivational periods throughout the day. Even if I'm looking at a whole bunch of huge projects and they're overwhelming and I feel buried under that weight, I tend to just sit and stare at the wall and contemplate all the things I have to do. And this goes back to budgeting time, obviously. But I'll have so many things to do that I won't do anything. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, where you're just kind of overwhelmed by the weight of all these things that you need to get done. And you just ultimately don't end up doing anything. Like, you'll sit and contemplate this for an hour, and now that hour is gone. So what I've learned, and this is correlated to the mental space as well, that if I just get up from my chair or get up off the couch and just go, if I just start to do, if I go downstairs into the laser shop, now I'm there and now I'll do something. And even if it's just tidy up the workspace, that's one thing done. Check. And I've heard people refer to it as, just when you get out of bed, just making your bed is like the first step to having that reward factor to your day right at the get-go. So it's the small things. I think I try to acknowledge all the small things, all the small victories, all the small checklist, punch list items that I check off. So, and hopefully you have a good circle of friends too. If you've got anybody that you open up to, I mean, always be communicating with your friends, and if I'm to fault as well, if, I should check up on my friends more than I do. You get drowned out in your day-to-day routine, especially if you're busy and you forget to kind of keep tabs on your friends just to make sure that things are going well, so if you're the one that's dealing with some more ruts than victories, then definitely talk to your friends, because more often than not, they're a good voice of reason, and at least someone to just like talk to, get things off your chest. Dylan asked a few other questions too, almost along that same line. Is there anything that you wish you could change about your life right now that you can't? I think it's, this is looking forward, not back. I mean, I guess you could speak about both, but I'm super impatient. I understand that good things don't come overnight, and things things that you want to work towards don't happen overnight either. As far as curation goes, starting a business or starting a brand or just getting to where you want to be, even at your job, it takes time. So for me, is there anything that I wish I could change that I can't? I mean, I want the process, but obviously all of my goals I want to achieve sooner than later. So I tend to get impatient about it. So I guess I ultimately wouldn't change that. That's something that always passes my mind. I always wish that things would speed up. Looking backwards though, there's a lot of things I would nudge myself in, not necessarily different directions, but I would try to guide myself for better financial decisions right out of high school. Being a professional BMX rider for 8 or so years was a dream come true, and I would do it 10 times over. I really would. But I left the BMX industry. I only worked like part-time jobs at bike shops here and there and really didn't save up any money. When I made enough monthly to pay my bills off of riding, I just did that. I didn't work a job. So if I had known that by the time I was 28, I first went pro at 20 in 2005, 2010, 2011-ish. 2011 was my last year. 2010 was Road Fools 18. I was on Road Fools in 2010. So it was 6-7 full years maybe. But at the end of that run, I didn't have any money saved up, so it was almost like I was restarting, graduating high school and being thrown out into the world again. So yeah, there's a few things, I can't change anything that's already happened. So if I could, I would change a few things then and be a little bit more diligent about setting myself up to be in a better place to start these new endeavors, which I have no doubt these endeavors that I'm on now would be the same things I would be pursuing even if I'd made different decisions throughout my 20s. I would have just kind of given myself a little bit more insight to working a little bit harder. I worked hard at riding BMX. I played music almost full time then too, and I would have saved more money for sure. But as far as everything that I've done, I know that everything I've done leading up to this point has made me who I am today. So I appreciate that a lot. So I try to embrace that as best I can and not look back with any sort of regret. Dylan's last question was, when's the last time you did a burnout? Okay. So if any of you have followed me on Instagram for a long time, you have never seen a burnout. You've never seen me do a burnout. All my cars are old, and that doesn't mean they're not capable of doing burnouts. But I just know that most of my friends, when they do burnouts, they break something in their car. Now, this isn't, I shouldn't say most. I've just been around a few friends who have done burnouts and they, break an axle or lose a clutch or transmission or something. And I don't necessarily thoroughly enjoy working on my cars. I'm learning to love the process more, but I don't know. I saw enough burnouts as a kid through my dad and my uncles and just all the local hot rod guys. They used to do burnouts here in front of the house all the time. The last time, so I'm not big on it, basically, is the disclaimer in this whole thing, is I can count on one hand the amount of burnouts I've ever done in my entire life. But the last one I did was in my bagged Mercedes 190E. That was a 5-speed manual 190E. And it was right out here in front of my house. There's a slight grade in the road. It's a paved main road that goes through my town. I'm a few miles outside of town, so it's a little quieter here, but it's still the main road through town nonetheless. But it's uphill one way just a little bit. And when I was a kid, my dad, my uncle, and like I said, a bunch of the local hot rod guys would do burnouts right in front of the house going up the hill. And whenever I would come home with my dad in one of his muscle cars, and he would come, he'd slow down a little bit before the driveway and almost come to a stop before the driveway, I knew there was a burnout coming. And it, wasn't every day, so you appreciate it every time it happened. So the summer I owned my 190, which was 2013, I was living here at the house, and I was just coming home from town, and I stopped as I'm pulling up to the driveway on the road. I just had this inclination. I'm like, I'm going to do a burnout. I'm going to stop in front of the driveway where my dad and my uncle and where everyone else had done burnouts when I was a kid. And I'm going to pour one out for them and do a burnout. So there was no one with me. No one was in the car. No one was traveling with me. I was just by myself, broad daylight, 3 o'clock in the afternoon or so. And I stopped right in front of the driveway and open diff, one wheel squeal, let that thing eat. Like just let it eat. And distance wise, it wasn't, too crazy. I mean, I probably let her roll for a little bit afterwards for, 50 feet maybe, but one wheel peel all the way up. At the very beginning, there were 2 marks, but that was the diff just deciding which side was going to ultimately let her rip. So I do have a photo somewhere, and after this episode comes out, I'll try to look for it and I'll post it in my Instagram stories. But I do have a photo. I walked out into the road afterwards and took a photo of the one wheel peel. But that was the last time I did a burnout. It was 2013. That was almost 8 years ago now. Wow, it's crazy. I think we're due for another one. I almost thought about doing one in the Corvair this past summer. Same deal. I was alone. I was coming home and I stopped in front of the house and I just done all the U-joints in the rear end. So the independent rear suspension in the Corvair is an inner and outer U-joint independent suspension, similar to the C1 or C2 Corvettes. So basically each axle has an inner and an outer U-joint. And so they're pretty stout. And I just did, like 2 summers ago, I just did all 4 of those U-joints. So I think aside from the internals of the transaxle, I think that thing can handle a burnout. And I've never done a burnout in that car. So maybe one of these days, maybe for a YouTube episode, that way if it breaks, I've got some footage of the thing breaking. William from Phoenix, Arizona, Deluxe Lowlight Gia on Instagram says, trade me the 700 for one of my VWs. Man, I can't do it. Your Gia is amazing. He has a static Karmann Gia that is just panned on the floor. He came out to our Governors Club meet in Phoenix when we were driving my E23 cross country to sell it in LA back a couple of summers ago. And he brought that thing out and I swore I didn't see him pull in. I saw it parked at the meet, which was at an In-N-Out Burger, no less. And I thought it was aired out. And then when I was chatting with him before he left, that thing just scraped out of the yard and right down the road. So that thing's really sweet. But I'm not ready to get rid of the 700. And to be honest, I think I'd have to get more money than most people would want to spend for that car. Both for the sentimental value, its uniqueness factor, because it's like they're super hard to find. And 3, the amount of time my father and I have into that project is just absurd how much time we have into that thing. But anything's possible. Let me see. Dennis Big D. What's up, Dennis? He asks, when are you heading to Riverside? Yeah, so I think that Tuesday before the show, we're heading down. I'm not sure what date that is. That is the 16th. Yeah, I think we're going to try to hit the road at like 1 a.m. This is usually my schedule when I drive to Chattanooga. It's about 20 hours from here. And I try to leave at like 1 a.m. and just hammer straight there. So I'm getting there by like 9 o'clock at night or so. So that's the plan right now. We'll see how it goes. Towing a car usually takes a bit longer for overall drive speed and the amount of times you have to stop for fuel, and obviously traffic and accidents and all that have to be factored in too. But worst case scenario, if we stay Tuesday, we'll probably stay Tuesday in Virginia somewhere as long as everything goes smoothly. If we have to break the drive up, and arrive in Chattanooga Wednesday morning. So that way we have Wednesday there to just kind of hang out. For how far the drive is, it's like we can't just get down there for just a week, for just a weekend. I mean, I normally try to go down for a week, and even last year we went down for 2 weeks. I'm still trying to move to Chattanooga at some point in the near future, hopefully. So the last few times I've gone down, I've gone down for a week or 2 to just kind of mosey around outside of the city to kind of survey the area and kind of see where if there's other areas I'd rather live than others. So yeah, I think we're going to be down there Wednesday through Sunday, head home Monday morning. And I think maybe Thursday morning, we did a Governors Club meet on the Thursday night before the fall meet this past October. But I think we might try to do like a Friday morning, like Cars and Coffee somewhere in Chattanooga. So more on that on Instagram. I got to get back with Mason to try to see if we've got a good venue lined up for that. But we'll post about that on the fly. Looking forward to seeing you nonetheless, though. Let me see. Alex McGinnis, 09. Alex actually sent me some root beers that I'll be reviewing on the next episode. I might even start integrating that into the YouTube episodes as well, just to kind of punch through them. Alex says, what kind of crazy air controller are you building for the 700? Yeah, I did put out some word on an episode on YouTube and on Instagram that I was switching that up in the car. I have a lot of work into the center console in the 700 where the controller, the Airlift 3P controller currently is. I am switching it up. It's honestly nothing crazy. It involves a lot of design and laser cutting and laser engraving. I'm making like this cool holder and controller stand for it. I'm going to be starting on that tomorrow actually, and I'll be trying my best to document the whole process on YouTube. So hopefully you'll have an episode up by the weekend. Or if you're hearing this, hopefully this episode's already out. If not, hopefully in the next couple of days, there'll be an episode of building the new controller, the Air Ride controller in the 700. Let's see. Moving on. Xavier.png says, Dunkin' sponsor yet? And favorite flavor of ice cream? So no Dunkin' sponsor yet, even though we joke about it. I like trash coffee, and I seem to always go back to Dunkin', even though you always get your coffee made wrong, it seems like. But I would gladly accept the Dunkin' sponsor, that's for sure. I spend enough money there. As far as favorite flavor of ice cream, here's a real Northeastern one. Golden vanilla ice cream with pure maple syrup over it. And if you haven't tried it, please take my word, head to your grocery store, wherever you are. Hopefully your local grocery store sells pure maple syrup, more than likely from Vermont or Canada or New Hampshire, Maine, etc. Pure maple syrup, not like a fake, Aunt Jemima or any of that stuff. Get a pure maple syrup. Doesn't have to be golden vanilla, but just a vanilla ice cream, and pour that maple syrup liberally all over that ice cream. And thank me later, because it is phenomenal. And that's pretty simple. I mean, I don't like crazy. I mean, I like coffee dough. I like coffee ice cream and cookie dough ice cream. But man, it's hard to beat vanilla ice cream with maple syrup on it, because that is phenomenal. Moving on with the questions. Jeremy, nobody at RRM, which stands for Rat Rod Magazine, says, what is another out-of-the-box build you want to do? Anything American again or Australian? Out-of-the-box build. So I've talked for years about K-cars, and I've talked about it on the podcast. I love K-cars. Chrysler, Plymouth, K-cars. And notably, the first-gen Caravan. So I really want to do a first-gen Dodge Caravan. It can either be a panel or passenger in the factory 5-speed manual, preferably with the OEM 2.2 turbo motor in it. So it's like the rarest spec. It's the turbo 2.2, which is rare. The Caravan and the manual was rare. They're front-wheel drive, obviously, but I really like them. I like the wedge and box cars of the 80s. And I don't know why. I really, really like them a lot. And so I want to do, and I was actually talking with Alex McGinnis about this the other night. Alex just LS swapped his really cool Chevy Astro van, which is kind of along the same wavelength as the K series Caravans. It's just bigger. Very retro, very 80s vibe in those things. We were talking just the other night about first gen Caravan. So it's not on the list of things I want to do this year, but I've kind of kept my eyes open for those like elderly owned, low mileage, cream puff, always sat in the garage, super cheap because no one wants those things. So that's kind of an out of the box build that I've been looking at. As far as American goes, it's not really out of the box, but I really want to do a Chevy 2 build. I think that one might be pretty soon, hopefully. I want to do a first-gen Nova. But basic spec, like base spec. I'm not looking for a coupe with a V8. I want a 4-door with like a column 3-shift or 3-speed manual shift with like a straight 6 in it. I just want a base model 4-door, preferably from the Southwest, that's just got the perfect sunburnt patina to it, and just a cruiser. Like I'd really like to take on one of those projects. As far as Australian goes, man, I'd love an old Holden, and like an old one. I mean, they're getting expensive, but yeah, there's a handful. I've been to Australia and went to a couple like cruising nights. I was visiting some friends, Josh and Izzy. Shout out to Josh and Izzy. Went out for their wedding in Tanunda, which is just outside Adelaide in the south coast. And yeah, there's a lot of really cool like local car meets there and whatnot. And there's a lot of really cool Australian like Vauxhalls, Holdens. I like all that stuff. Let me see. Braden, tire problems, says, congrats on the shop, and I hope you like the root beer. Yeah, I do, man. I really do. I can already tell it's taking a toll on my voice from swigging it, but I do. And thank you so much, man. He also says, what do you think of doing car ratings? Just like the questions for the podcast, pick some cars to rate. Well, if it was somebody's personal car that they've modified, I'm not too into that because I am a 100% advocate for your car is your canvas and you are the artist. So there's things that I don't like as far as my taste goes, but it's not my car. So I don't know if I would rate someone else's car for the work they've done to it. I'd be more comfortable rating cars that are like from the manufacturer and kind of talking about what I like and what I don't like. I would actually really enjoy that as a job. I'd really like doing like what Johnny Lieberman's doing with Motor Trend. I'd love to be like a car tester, drive cars. I mean, most of us car guys would. I like writing though too. And I'm part of the grammar police too. I'm super weird about grammar and spelling and all that stuff. So I think I would be decent at it. I think I could have like, aside from the experience, you know, I feel like I'd have to drive a plethora of cars to like really be able to grasp how you can review a car all in all. But no, that's a good idea, man. I think that's something I'd really enjoy pursuing in the future, to either review cars or rate like manufacturer cars or something. Plus that gives you an excuse to try and drive all sorts of really cool cars. OW Cooling says, is Lone Star Throwdown 2022 going to be a goal for the cab over? It's going to be a goal to go in 2022. Every year I say I'm going to go to LST. It's in Texas and it's always in February. I always say I'm going to go because here in New Hampshire in February, there's nothing going on. The beginning of February is usually Eurotripper in Florida, which I go to every year. But I always forget until the week before about Lone Star Throwdown. I almost booked the flight the night before the show this year. I had a friend driving down from Kansas, John Hansen. Thank you again, John, for the invite. John was driving down from Kansas and was going to be driving right through Dallas. And I looked at flights and almost booked the flight into Dallas to get picked up on his way through to Houston, Conroe, just north of Houston where the show is. The cab over will not be done by February next year. I mean, I don't have a crystal ball, but I know what needs to be finished on that truck and the things I want to redo on that truck. And I know how insane this year is going to be as far as the amount of hustling I need to do to justify having that new shop space and the amount of cars I need to like bring in and send out the door in order to pay for that shop space. And the cab over is going to take a lot of time and a lot of money to finish. And I don't see myself having either of those things at my disposal this year, especially because I still want to move south. Preferably, I mean, it may not happen, but preferably by this time next year, 2022, by spring, I want to be living in South Tennessee. I really do. If things don't work out that way and more doors open here, then so be it. But that's kind of my tentative plan at the moment. But I do plan on being at LST next year for sure, hopefully. Strange Notes 4, my friend Johnny Smith from England. Happy birthday. Wishing you a great day from across the pond. Hope you're doing well. Hey, thank you so much, Johnny. Hope you're well as well. Hope we get a chance to see each other soon. I know it's been a really weird last year now. Hopefully by summer we can travel abroad again, because I know Players Classic is on. I saw Jay and Carl and the boys make that official post the other day. And yeah, I'd love to get back out to England for Players. That's been a show that I've been doing annually for about 5 years or so. and would love to get down there for that, or get over there. I mean, Johnny, actually, side note, Johnny is the one who drove me across England to go look at and ultimately purchase my Lada 2101 that I bought on our Worthersy trip. So thank you again for that, Johnny. Let me see. On that same note, speaking about the Lada, Fetter Max says, was it hard importing cars yourself? So the Lada is actually the only car that I've done all the legwork to import myself. And it wasn't that bad, to be honest. It was a lot of paperwork, a lot of phone calls or emailing, to basically sort out all of the logistics. I bought the car in person, which helped. I was able to see the car in person. I was in England. I was able to handle the transaction in person, which obviously helped. I didn't have to worry about someone, having a friend to go look at it, or somebody you may not even know. Obviously, if you don't know anyone where you're looking at purchasing a car, buying a car through an import company is obviously the safest way to go. Even then you can get burned, but they're doing the legwork. They've probably got access to the auctions and whatever. It wasn't too bad. No, it wasn't too bad. But that's because I've been able to develop friendships with people in a lot of different industries in a lot of different areas. So I was able to help utilize different friends to get that whole deal done easier than it would have been if I knew nobody over there. So it wasn't that hard, but it was a learning process. It's a process I'll probably, hopefully do more often in the future, because again, with the Ludwig's garage space, I want to do more importing of cars that were never available here, and either just selling them directly from import or putting my hand on it and kind of making them a little bit more fun to look at and drive and sell that way. So hopefully more importing in the future. Let me see. Truls Venman says, what country and which car meet will you attend first after COVID? Well, I'm hoping Players Classic. That's in June. As long as everything is staying afloat here with the shop and just work is staying steady, because I never know how that's going to go. Players Classic would be the next one, but I really want to do Alt Race in Poland. That was formerly called Racism. Adrian re-switched the name over to Alt Race, and that's a show I've wanted to attend for the last 5 years easily, maybe even more, and haven't had a chance to go to yet. So that I believe is in July. So depending on what international travel is like by then to the EU, Players Classic in England and Alt Race in Poland are two major ones that are on the list for me. I haven't done Alt Race, obviously, so I'd love to finally punch that one off. Let me see. But I do want to get to Norway. Norway and Finland. I haven't been up there before, so hopefully I'll be able to meet you again in your area. That'd be great. 244_Jake says, patina maintenance. And what's the coolest patina you've seen and on what car? Oh my gosh. So for patina maintenance, for a while on the Corvair, I was rubbing the car down with a diesel fuel and oil mix. And that was basically the equivalent of like undercoating your vehicle for the most part. So all that was doing was slowing the rust process down in the metal. But it was also darkening the rust down, which in my opinion gives it a better and more menacing look. When rust is dry, it tends to have that orange, bright red, real dry, crisp kind of look to it. But, obviously a rusty car in the rain looks darker. It's got more of a sheen to it, a little more menacing looking. And that's what this process did. It did both, it made it look cooler, look darker and whatnot, but it also basically undercoated the surface, overcoated the surface of the car. And so I was doing that for a while, but kind of stopped. I mean, I did that so much over the first few years that I had that car that it kind of permeated like into the metal, and it kind of held that like darker look, but also like that like final undercoat, I think. So I haven't been on board. I like the look, but I haven't really been sold on clear coating over patina. And I don't have any firsthand experience with that, but from things I've heard and things I've read, you can ultimately have to deal with problems down the road in the future with that. Because I've heard stories of like the rust staying active in the metal, and the clear coat didn't really stop the rust process, and then the rust obviously ended up ruining the clear coat, and then to get the clear coat off, you ruin the rust or the patina that you ultimately set out to preserve in the first place. Once it's clear coated, it's easier. You know, you can wash the car, and it's coated. I don't know. I try to keep my cars out of the weather and under cover as much as possible, and just like undercoat them with a diesel motor oil mix. I just put some latex gloves on. I've got a jug of the material, and I just use a rag, and I soak the rag, and I just wax the car down with it basically. The 700 has like better for the paint that's remaining on that car. It's better paint than what the Corvair has remaining. So I've actually buffed the paint out on the 700. Like what's left of the paint, I've cut that down and got a shine back out of that paint. And that's one of the things I have to do again before Riverside. Is since it's a single stage paint, it sits out in the sun for a bunch, and that the top layers of the paint die off, and you kind of have to do it again. I'm careful about not burning through that paint though. I do it all by hand, no abrasive, so it doesn't swirl, and that makes the car look like the paint is newer, but the rust kind of like contrasts to it. There's probably much more maintenance that people do that I don't, but yeah, for the longest time I was just rubbing it down like an oil mix to just kind of like help keep the rust process where it was at rather than accelerating. Last question is by Jack B2112. What builds are you considering in the future, and will you be returning to H2O? So the first part of the question, I kind of just covered. I'd love to do, well, I don't know. So the Q45 is next. Once that's out the door, I've got a few cars that I'm thinking about taking on. I won't give too much away right now, but I've got a few friends with some cars that they are selling not so ambitiously, that might be available in the next year, the next few months, hopefully. And if I get the Q45 moved, I still have yet to decide if I want to sell the Century. I think she might go down the road this year. I'm not sure. There's a lot of work I want to and need to do on that car before I believe it's ready to sell. But yeah, I'd love to do a Chevy too. I'd love to do a first gen Caravan. So those are some of the quirky things. I mean, the Nova's not that quirky, but the Van's quirky. There's a few realistic ones on the burners that I'd like to kind of hype up a little bit and kind of unveil in a cool way that I haven't really thought about yet. So hopefully in the next couple months before summer, I'll have like one or two more projects in Ludwig's garage in that Instagram and YouTube space that I can kind of hype up. And who knows if it'll actually happen, but some German cars, an American car. I like too much stuff. If I sell the Century, it's going to be real hard not to deep dive on like an imported car. That was my justification. If I sold the Century and I didn't find something I couldn't live without here, I was going to look towards Japan or Europe again for another import. That's where most of my fancy is struck, I believe. So, but that's basically going to do it, guys. I mean, we did just under an hour. I mean, that's better than I was thinking. I thought this was going to be just a 20, 30-minute quick thing. I can tell that this root beer has definitely coated my throat and made it more difficult to speak. And I may have mentioned this before. I don't know if I mentioned this on the podcast, but post-COVID, I realized that my voice was different. And maybe not as far as its overall tone or register, but I found my voice like cutting out as I spoke. If I spoke for a length of time at like a pretty low register or a low like range, I'd have to constantly keep clearing my throat. I'd feel like part of my vocal cords would just quit working, and I would only be operating on like my falsetto layers. And that has been getting better. I've noticed it. I was real worried about my voice for my music, for singing, for tracking vocals and that sort of stuff. I was real worried that this may have done irreparable damage or permanent damage to my vocal cords and ultimately hinder my voice for singing. I'm definitely a songbird for sure. I mean, that's one of my passions, obviously, is music. So that started to alleviate. I started to feel like that was not happening so much anymore. But this episode, I feel like I've taken a few steps backwards, but I'm blaming it on the root beer. So I think for the future episodes, I may try to do the root beer reviews at the end. That way I'm not suffering through with both being gassy and like burping and having my throat cut out because of the root beer. But thank you so much again to Braden, Tire Problems, for sending the root beer. The Grizzly Paw. Real stoked on this. I'm going to enjoy the rest of this before it's too warm. But that'll do it, guys. John Ludwick on Instagram, john.ludwick. If you're listening, just streaming this audio, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's just youtube.com/John Ludwick, JOHN. Ludwick's Garage, the Governor's Club on Instagram as well as the Rising Sea. I'll keep plugging that. Most of the music you hear in the YouTube episodes are my music, or is my music. I've been using some other synthwave here and there for some time-lapse stuff, some montage stuff in the YouTube episodes. But the intro and outro music you hear in the podcast and in the YouTube episodes at the beginning and the end is me. That is the Rising Sea. They're just little 30-second clips that I've saved from some of my songs that I alternate through on those intros. But yeah, I'm hoping to do more with that. Music's obviously, unfortunately, on the back burner because it's not a moneymaker, and that is what I need to be focusing on now as far as the laser work, which is all under Ludwick's Garage now as well. Super grateful for all the work that's been coming in lately. It's been needed, both financially and emotionally, for taking the shop space on and diving in headfirst on this whole venture, to starting my own shop and working out of my own shop and basically being self-reliant on a shop. So if you've put any orders in for your brand or business, for key rings or anything else I've made in the past, I greatly appreciate it. You guys are what helped me do this to stay afloat. It means the world to me, especially in today's climate. And that being said, you guys are why I do this. Every time I put an episode out, whether or not you message me on Instagram or it's a YouTube comment, I read them all. I seriously appreciate all of the support. I'm hoping to expand into doing more of this stuff, maybe some weekly conversations for just Q&As or something. But I'm going to work my hardest to continue putting content out, basically to just involve you guys. I mean, if you've ever seen me at a car show, you've seen me standing around with people talking. Like, that's all I do at car shows. And that's basically why I travel to the lengths that I do to car shows, is to see you guys, to see my friends, to hang out, to talk. That's what this podcast is all about. The solo ones are super hard because I have to sit here alone and can't bounce conversation off of anybody. I'm basically sitting here talking to the microphone, talking to the camera, into the microphone. And so that's kind of difficult, but I feel like the more I do it, hopefully the easier it'll be to basically have you guys in here with me and kind of talk to you, even though it's not a back and forth conversation. But again, thank you guys so much for the support. Yeah, that's it. See you guys in the next episode. Again, Ludwick's Garage merch, actually, unplug that one more time. Come see me at the Governor's Club booth at Riverside, March 20th, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Riverside Chattanooga is the Instagram handle. I'll have the hats, shirts, key rings, magnets. I'm laser cutting and laser engraving my own magnets, these 2-color brushed gold and black magnets. Really excited about everything. New stickers. Yeah, anything that's left over or even new batches will be available online for all of you that can't make it to Riverside. So I will be plugging that hard when I get home from Chattanooga, Tennessee. Thank you guys so much. I'll talk to you guys later.